Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I'm here with a very special guest, Miss Arcot. Miss Arcot is a flight assurance engineer at Northrop Grumman Space Systems, where she works to ensure mission success for satellites. Earlier this year, she graduated with a bachelor's degree from Princeton University, where she majored in mechanical and aerospace engineering and minored in materials science. Miss Arcot aims to use innovations in aerospace materials to increase access to space. She is passionate about STEM outreach and enjoys sports and music. Welcome, Miss Arcot. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to talk to me today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, so kind of before we can understand like your journey getting into the space industry and kind of understanding that this is where you want to work and be in the future, I'd like to know more about your typical day at work. I know it's probably a little bit different because you might be in a virtual setting, but does it usually run?
Yeah, so it's a little bit different since I actually just started my new job a couple weeks ago. So at this point,
Congratulations.
thank you. So I've pretty much just been doing a bunch of online training modules. So getting up to speed, reading about some of the different techniques and concepts that I'll need to understand for flight assurance and other just safety practices within the company. But that's wrapping up now. And so starting to get a little bit more involved with some of the different meetings related to safety and mission assurance for some of the different projects. And in general, with flight assurance, we work throughout the entire process for our program. So from the conceptual and planning phase through design, and then all the way through integration and testing, and then launch. So a big part of what we do is just making sure that everything works the way it's supposed to. So keeping track of technical alerts and seeing if they pertain to any of the components that are on our spacecraft and how to mitigate any of those issues, as well as when parts come in from a supplier, all of the receiving inspections, and if there are any problems, doing a non-conformance report and then following that through to the end. And then a big chunk is during that integration and test phase when all the different parts of the spacecraft come together and get assembled, and you run through different tests to make sure that it'll work properly once it's up in space. And if anything goes wrong there, then we're the main people who handle the failure review and figuring out how to get rid of the problem.
Okay, wow, that's actually an interesting job. I bet you have like different things you're trying to solve every day. Is it kind of based off of your training? Do you feel like it's a job where you're going to be doing different things every day and dealing with different types of problems? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And that was one of the things that drew me to it, is that, like you're saying, it's something different every day. You never know what's going to go wrong and what you're going to have to work on. And so it's a good way to learn about a lot of different things and just start trying out a bunch of just working on a bunch of different systems that come up a lot on satellites.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like I feel like it's a very problem solving and sort of skill. It's not just doing the same thing over and over again, which is something that I feel like draws a lot of people into the space industry. Another like important question that I had was how is it studying at Princeton University for mechanical and aerospace engineering? Because I know a lot of people would love to go to Princeton for, and I've always wondered how is the environment and how is the course load?
Yeah, so it's kind of, I would say, in some ways a weird place to study engineering, just because there aren't as many engineering students at some of the other bigger, more technical schools. So I think about a quarter of the students are engineering students, and so when you're in your engineering classes, it's pretty similar to a lot of the other engineering programs. There's sometimes a lot of requirements that you have to do, a lot of problem sets and projects in your classes, but also a lot of collaboration, which is nice. Especially within my department, it was a smaller department. I think we had 50 people who graduated this year, and so we all pretty much knew each other, and everyone was always super helpful, wanting to help each other out on our homework, and making sure everyone understood what was going on. But the other thing that I liked about Princeton is, it's kind of weird that it was so few engineers, but that was also probably one of the things that I liked most about it, was being able to learn from people from other departments as well. So, when taking our classes outside of engineering in things like politics or history or anything like that, being able to be in those classes with students who are in those departments and studying that and learning from them, and also just learning from the other people on campus and their backgrounds.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And like when you were in Princeton and now because you're a trainee, are there any exciting projects or research or papers that you wrote that you found very helpful to increasing your understanding or something that's very exciting that you'd like to share?
Sure. Probably the biggest one would be my senior thesis that I worked on in my final year of college, and it was all about additive manufacturing for different metals that are used in the aerospace industry. So specifically, we were looking at aluminum alloys, and I had the opportunity to go through sort of the entire mechanical design process
Oh,
for just a small additive manufacturing setup that would be used in one of our labs in the department. And so it was kind of the first time that I was working on something sort of independently and responsible for every phase of it and making sure we had all of the funding that we needed to get all the parts and going through all of the different designs and manufacturing and testing for it.
yeah, that definitely, I feel like one of the most exciting parts about being in a university, I feel like, is just having an opportunity to research and having those professors who can support you and just like, writing about something that you love. So that's definitely great to hear. Did you always imagine yourself in the position you're in today in terms of, pursuing space and like attending or being able to work now in the space industry?
Um, I guess in terms of being in the space industry, it's something that I had been interested in probably since elementary school. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to work on within the space industry, and I think for a while I kind of assumed that I would just have to work at NASA if I wanted to be in the industry. But recently, with so many different companies coming up with new space and commercial space and all of that, there's just so many more opportunities that I had realized.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't really know what I sort of envisioned myself doing when I first got interested in space. I know at some point I wanted to be an astronaut, and then I realized that I don't really like roller coasters, so that probably wouldn't be a good idea. And so I thought maybe I'd do the engineering part of it instead. But in terms of my specific role, before I had interviewed for this position, I didn't know that flight assurance existed. I didn't know it was really a thing that I would want to pursue. And once I learned more about it, it definitely seemed like something that would be a good way to start my career.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the professionals I've talked to, like for example, I talked to an optical technician at NASA, and she was like, I had no clue I could do anything with optics in space, and I had no clue this was a job. And so it's really interesting to see how like there's so many jobs that we don't even realize exist and are part of really vital, important points in the space industry. So it's very interesting to hear a different job that is also very unique that I have never heard before meeting you. So yeah, it's definitely cool. Did you have any kind of like twists and turns in, I guess, like to being in the position you are today? Or did you kind of, it was mostly straightforward for you?
I would say, see, I mean, I was interested in space for a while, but throughout high school, it was a little bit harder to sort of think about being involved with it just because, in high school, a lot of times you're just super busy with everything you have going on with
Mhm.
classes and everything you do outside of class. And there wasn't really much that I was doing that was related to space. And it wasn't something that we talked about much in my classes. And so for a while in high school, I was more interested in chemistry and a little bit of physics. And so for some time, I thought that I would go work like as a chemist at like a consumer chemistry company making like soap or household goods, that kind of thing. Um, and eventually, it wasn't really until I was deciding where to go to college where I thought, you know what, I've been interested in space for a while. Maybe that's something that I want to do instead. And so I ended up picking a school that had an aerospace program so that I would have that option. Um, and eventually I realized that if I were to go into the consumer chemistry industry as I had thought, I think I'd really enjoy like sort of the day-to-day work. Um, but in the long term, I think it was more important to me to really be excited about what I was working on. And I think that's something that we really have in the space industry. And that's something that I really enjoyed about it is that everyone I've met who's working on this kind of stuff they're really excited and passionate about it. And it's very clear that they want to be there and they want to be doing that work. And I think that's something that is sometimes unique to some industries.
Yeah, I feel like your point about saying there wasn't a lot of exposure to the space industry in high school is actually very true. And I feel like, especially in my area, I mean, of course, many other places around the world, even, I feel like space is something that is designated for older people or something that is not applicable to younger children's studies. And I feel like it's very important to come out of that stereotype. Like right now, for my Girl Scout Gold Award projects, a part of it is actually I'm trying to help students I'm helping my county incorporate model rocketry education into the curriculum of like elementary and middle school and potentially high school students, because I feel like there's so much to be done with the standards in our curriculum, but they're not being done. It's like something that's not even explored or touched. So I think just increasing exposure to students from a young age, because I feel like when you're a kid, practically everyone dreams of being an astronaut or working at NASA, and I feel like a lot of people just don't pursue it because they don't realize of the opportunity it has, especially now that a lot more businesses or a lot more companies are opening, like SpaceX. Before people didn't know about it, and now it's like a huge deal. So I feel like seeing the broader vision and view and providing that information to younger generations is very vital. And I feel like you bring up a very good point by saying a lot of students just feel demotivated or sidetracked into a different career, because if you think about it, in school there's a lot more opportunities to be like a doctor or go into being a teacher rather than being in going into aeronautics. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you just said. And, um, beyond sort of that exposure to space, sort of showing people all of the different things that they can do in order to contribute to the space industry. So, pretty much any job that you might want to have, you can have and have it be in the space industry. And so, it's not just people working on rockets or satellites, it's also, everything else that goes into making sure the industry can function. So things like communications and business and all of those other fields.
Yeah, and actually that's a kind of a theme of the webinar series I'm doing. So I'm really glad you bring up that point, because a part of it is everyone feels you have to be a rocket scientist or a physicist genius, but you really don't have to be good and strong in physics to work in a space organization or be a part of something. There's a lot of marketing, a lot of art that actually goes into designing things, and math, and you don't have to be a genius in one specific subject like math or physics. There's a lot of other departments like business and marketing that also are really valuable. And I feel like that's another point. If you're interested in space, you can work towards your strong point and still work in it. It's, still work in a space organization. So yeah, I think that's definitely a good point. I think that kind of leads to me my next question, which is a lot of people have this stereotype or boundary that you have to be this old male, person who just works at, space organizations, or they're good enough for it. What's your advice to kids who are watching this and feel like maybe I'm just not smart enough? Like what advice are you going to give them to continue to pursue space industry?
Yeah, and I would say it's sort of the most important thing, I think, is being interested and excited in it and having sort of a willingness to learn. Um, I think in my job, and I think a lot of entry level jobs, we're working on things that we haven't really done before. All of the internships that I did throughout college, it was things that were completely new, and they used some of the things that I learned in class, but a lot of times it was sort of a completely new application and new skills that I had to learn. And so I think a lot of times the most important thing is being willing to learn and wanting to sort of put in that effort to be able to learn what you need to do for that job. It's not about sort of being a quote unquote genius or getting the best grades or anything like that. It's just being excited about it, and I guess having enough interest and excitement that you're willing to put in the time and effort that it takes to learn the skills that you need to have for whatever tasks that you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think hard work and passion overpowers natural abilities you might have. Definitely. Another thing is you were mentioning internships at your college. Was there any like specific internship role or opportunity that you had from high school to college and even beyond and before, did you have any certain thing that made you very excited or made you learn so much more knowledgeable about your industry?
I would say the biggest thing in that sense was probably the Matthew Isakowitz Fellowship. So there are a couple different aerospace fellowships that have been coming up. So the first one was for Goins, and then Matthew Isakowitz started. And starting this year, there's also the Patty Gray Smith Fellowship, as well as I think it's called the Z Factor Fellowship. And applications are still open for that one due in January. But all of these fellowships are just a really cool way to get matched with an internship, but then also being able to learn from different people in industry. And so through the Isakowitz Fellowship, we had, since it was last year, we were able to have an in-person summit in Los Angeles, and there were a lot of really cool company tours and speakers and panels and different people in the aerospace industry who we were able to meet. And also just being able to talk to the other fellows and what they were doing in commercial space and their different experiences with it. And that was just a really good way to learn about all of the different opportunities that are out there. And I think that that was also a good way for me to start learning that, a lot of people in the industry actually really want to help people, especially people who are just getting started. And it can definitely be really intimidating to just reach out to someone who's kind of high up at a company and say, hey, I'm interested in this thing. Like, do you maybe want to talk about it? Or do you have any advice in starting my career? But I found that a lot of people are always more than happy to talk about it. And within this industry, like everyone that I've met is just really nice and, really, really excited about what they're doing and wanting to help other people enter the field as well.
Yeah, I mean, the people that I've interviewed so far, including yourself, they're just so kind and like giving with information. I think it's important to have that community. I think it's really nice. So these fellowships you were talking about, are they for college students or could younger students apply?
So yeah, mostly for college students. I think, yeah, so all of them are for undergrads or for different years and populations within undergrad. And then the MAT fellowship is also open to grad students.
Okay. And to wrap up the interview, I really wanted to learn and talk to you more about interesting space topics because I feel like a lot of people like to hear different perspectives on certain issues. But to kind of get that ball rolling, I first wanted to ask you, how do you like keep up with the constant rapid change of, information and knowledge in the space industry? Like I feel like every day I open Twitter or I read an article, there's like a completely new discovery that we have or a mind-blowing research that has been conducted. I feel like every day is changing. I mean, how do you personally keep up with all of this information and keep up with your work?
Yeah, so it's definitely very overwhelming to try to keep up with everything that's going on. And so yeah, I think for me also Twitter is a big one, just sort of going through it a little bit each day and just sort of seeing what's going on. I've also found that LinkedIn is sometimes a good way to keep track of news from different companies. A lot of times they'll post different articles or exciting announcements about what they're doing, and or if they have a new project coming up and they are going to be hiring a bunch of people, that's also a really good way to find out about stuff like that. And beyond that, I think a big thing has also just been sort of finding different communities of space people. I'm in a few different group chats with people who are either like from school or from internships or from things like that. And a lot of times they'll also share a lot of space news that's going on. And yeah, in terms of like, all of that and how it would relate to things that are going on at work, a lot of times it really varies company to company, but with Northrop at least, there seems to be a lot of like so every now and then there will be like sort of these newsletters that go out with sort of important updates. And then also just kind of meetings about the different programs and what's going on with all of those.
Yeah, I think a newsletter sounds amazing. I feel like that would be the best thing, just have that in your inbox. So how do you like anticipate or foresee changes in your industry? Like at this point of time, what is something that you are envisioning about the space industry?
I think, I would say two main ones. So one is you're seeing a lot more people able to get things launched into space, especially with different launch providers being able to sort of accommodate different payloads, get to different orbits, and more companies having success with that. It's becoming a lot easier for universities, or in some cases even high schools, to have like just a small CubeSat with different experiments or payloads being launched. And so there's so many more opportunities for people to launch things into space, which I think is really exciting. I know if I had the opportunity to do something like that in high school, that would have been a very cool opportunity. So it's exciting to see more people being able to get involved with projects like that. And the other big one is space debris. There's a lot of space debris, and I think people are starting to talk about that more and recognize how serious of a problem it is. And there's starting to be more missions going out trying to address it. I know there are a couple missions from Europe that are planning to try to tackle that. And Northrop Grumman this past year had a successful launch and rendezvous with their mission extension vehicle, or the MEV, which is going to go to different satellites and sort of correct its orbit to extend the mission, but then also move it into like a graveyard orbit when it's done, so that it's not just sitting there as debris. And I know there's starting to also be some more the requirements and regulations for satellites to sort of have enough propulsion that they're able to deorbit themselves when they're done.
That's really cool. I actually didn't know about these new missions. I definitely have to do some reading after this interview. To kind of, okay, another question that I guess I'm really excited about asking every single person I talk to is what excites you and what makes you nervous about the space industry? I feel like everyone has such unique perspectives, and just to give you a little bit of time to think about it, so something that excites me about the space industry is the utilization of AI robots and being able to conduct so many more missions with robots instead of human travel at much cheaper costs and more efficient ways, I think really excites me. I can't wait to see how much more advanced technology and computer science we can use in space. And something that makes me nervous is the balance between gaining support from the people on Earth and protecting our planet that we're living on right now. I feel like there's a lot of debate right now whether we should even fund a lot of, like, for example, NASA, because there's billions of budget every year dedicated to it. I feel like trying to come up with that balance where everyone's satisfied is something that's really debating right now. So that makes me nervous.
Yeah, I mean, I would say something that makes me excited sort of relates to that last point you just made, is just the amount of impact, or yes, direct impacts that things like small satellites are able to have. So whether it's sort of getting climate data or different imaging to be able to keep track of different like national disasters or crises that are going on, and also being able to help with communications and security and all of that. Especially with those small satellites becoming sort of cheaper and more innovative with lots of new technologies, there's definitely a lot of I guess just opportunities for those missions to just have a lot of impact and have ways that help people on Earth. So that's something that excites me about the space industry. Something that makes me nervous is, I would say, just generally sort of not using space in a responsible way. So whether that's sort of the debris stuff that I mentioned earlier, or even with talks of, eventually having more like robotic missions, as well as, eventually having people on the moon again and then onto Mars, just making sure that we're doing that in a responsible way. And, in terms of like any resources that we can get there, or how to set up different like bases or communities on those places, just making sure we're doing that responsibly.
Yeah, I know. I read this article the other day saying how we're gonna make like space a landfill soon. Like, we have to be super, strict with our regulations. I know we have a lot in place right now to avoid ruining space, but I think that we should stick with those guidelines and not contaminate it and, like, do anything irresponsible. I think that's definitely something that we should keep in mind and be cautious about. And for the last question, which I kind of end all my series with, is what advice do you have for young people based off your own experience regarding their pursuit of a passion in the STEM field? What advice would you give to the students that are watching this right now?
My biggest advice is if you want to do something, you can do it. I think it's very easy to sort of think that you can't do something, or even if someone just sort of mentions something minor that then makes you think that you're not able to pursue your dreams. There's just a lot of ways for someone to be excited about something and then not pursue it. And so I think my biggest advice is if you're excited, if there's something that reading about it is enjoyable, and if the thought of working in it is exciting to you, then go after it. Even if you don't think you can do it, you can. If other people think that you can't do it, they're wrong. And yeah, just sort of do what you want to do, and it'll work out if it's something that is exciting to you.
Yeah, 100%. I think leaving off with the 3 word or "you can do it" is really important because those words are really powerful, and, I think it's important to remember that we don't get caught up in the social stress or peer stress or, like, the bad grades or, the certain bad experiences we might have had, and just to keep pursuing our passion in whatever STEM field, STEAM field, interest we might have is very key. So I wanna thank you so much, Ms. Arcot, for, spending your time and, doing this interview with me. I'm sure many people who are looking at this are very thankful for your inspirational words. So thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you again for all of your questions.
Yeah. Bye.